So I just wanted to show the process that we've been going through for these policy revisions. I know you've been getting a lot of questions, but I just wanted to show you where we started and where we've been going with this. So I looked back on the agenda and the minutes, and we started talking about policy on July 17th, 2013. The final policy recommendations were voted on by the full commission on January 8th, 2014. So between July 17th and January 8th, we had multiple subcommittee meetings, and they were brought up to the full commission, but we didn't make a final vote on policy recommendations until January 8th, 2014. Then after we made the recommendations, we put a packet mailing together to all the seasoned vendors with a statement with the policy recommendations and with notifying the vendors of the policies being on the administrative committee meeting of January 27th and also of City Council meeting today. And we included the meetings, the agenda, the meeting minutes, and send it all out to all the vendors. So this is just a brief recap. We agreed to eliminate International Day, which was just a resale of crafts from wherever. We only had one walk-on vendor last summer, so it was more work than anything for one vendor. We worked with engaging student groups with the University of Idaho, college students possibly from LCSC. So we put language in the policy on engaging students. We streamlined the children's vendor participation area. It had about 4 paragraphs, and we narrowed it down to about 4 statements. We added Appendix 6, that was with permits and licensing, and that was with Cinda Williams, our extension agent, working with Department of Ag and researching different agencies and offices. We expanded the business site visits for all vendors, not just produce, but we looked at we could do a site visit on a food vendor or possibly a craft vendor, so we included all vendors. We put a line in requiring vendor sales reporting. We've done that in 13, but we put a little teeth to it by saying if they didn't report their sales, then they wouldn't be in the next year's market. So we put a little more emphasis on the sales reporting. 100 air miles to include existing out-of-mileage vendors. And in my administrative report, I highlighted all those vendors that were outside of the 100 air mile area. And the language that we put in the document was if they failed to participate in 14, then they wouldn't be in the market in 15. So we also did a restriction on the resale policy, and we used to have resales on blueberries, asparagus, nuts, and okra. And now it's down to blueberries and asparagus. And the language is the blueberries and asparagus, must be brought to market from within the 100-mile radius. So those were the major changes. We went to Administrative Committee on January 27th. We presented to the Administrative Committee on these policy revisions. We were tasked by the Administrative Committee to rework the policies, remove all the dates in the document to make it easily transferable from year to year. The discretion was given for resale beyond the 100 air miles to myself, the arts director, and or the market manager. We showed the revised map to include the 5th Street block between Main and 5th Street Alley to the east. And then we're here today because we were recommended to send recommendations to the full City Council, which is today, February 3rd.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Yep.
Even though before I turn this over to the council, this is not a public hearing, but we've received so many different emails and things, I thought I'd open it up for public
Okay.
for the next 15 or 20 minutes and let folks, because we got a number of folks out here, if they want to get up and talk for a few minutes about this, And if you want to speak on this, that'd be terrific. I will give you 3 minutes. If you do that, please state your name and where you live, and we will be more than happy. Come on up, young lady, and you can bring your young'un right up with you. That'll be just fine. You can introduce him as well, so how's that?
My name is Amanda Hickson House. My address is 4410 Highway 8, Troy, Idaho. Do you want to say your name? This is Phoenix, 2-year-old. So as Aaron said earlier, I'm on the Moscow Farmers Market Commission. I'm also a vendor, a prepared food vendor at the farmers market. And I'm also a consumer. I'm at the market every Saturday. I buy a lot of produce there and other things from other people. And I'm a business owner, and I'm a taxpayer, and I'm all sorts of different hats up here talking. And I wanted to give kind of a rebuttal to all of the public comment that came in about the 100 air mile policy. One, in the letters, a lot of people said that it was a rash decision, that it hadn't been thought out, that it's this new huge change to the policies. That is very wrong. A lot of the comments that were made in the letters were, I feel like they were grossly inaccurate and didn't contain the right information of what is fact. The air mile policy of 100 miles has been in effect since at least 2011. If anyone disputes that, I can pull out my big folder and show you the 2011 policies where it had the 100 air mile radiuses in there. Another thing is that a lot of the public comment thought that the Farmers Market Commission with that recommendation was kicking out a few token vendors, namely the Durfees, the Tona Makers, Akeley Berry, and the Boothmans. And that is very inaccurate. They are grandfathered in. They're selling at the market. They have been for years, and we are not kicking them out, and we think that they're an important part of the market. So I just wanted to clarify that. And I also feel like a lot of the people that commented don't have really an understanding of the wealth of this agricultural area. I wanted to bring a map that was in the National Geographic a couple years ago, and it's a map of all the soils on the entire planet. And it was amazing to me that on the whole globe there was a little dot that was labeled and it said the Palouse. And I don't think there was anywhere else that was specifically labeled like that. And it showed that the Palouse has the best soil possible on the globe. So this is an amazing agricultural area. And when we have 100 air miles that goes all the way out past Walla Walla and includes the Lewis and Clarkston Valley and is quite a big area. We're talking about air miles, not driving miles. It includes pretty much being able to grow almost anything except for bananas and coffee and cocoa for chocolate, I would say. So some of the comments that said, for example, that there won't be any produce in the market if people from outside 100 miles aren't allowed to come sell is not right. To say that there's no apples and peaches that are grown in this region is very incorrect. I'm sure a lot of you probably have apple trees in your own yard, so you know that that's not right. Also, as far as asparagus and blueberries go, there's 3 regions in Washington that produce 22 million pounds of asparagus annually. One of those is Walla Walla, which is 80 air miles from Moscow, so Walla Walla is included in the region. So there's a huge supply of asparagus that can be brought in from there. Blueberries grow really, really well in this region. I know a number of farmers that grow blueberries, and we did a lot of research when we were looking at making resale of blueberries and asparagus, making sure that they came from within 100 air miles. Our research included identifying vendors that grow blueberries or asparagus from within 100 air miles of Moscow. So I think that in going forward with the farmers market, the mission of the farmers market is to celebrate life on the Palouse by providing the community with the opportunity to buy and sell locally farmed and created produce. And the mission also talks about encouraging and supporting sustainable economic, social, and environmental practices. And I feel like if the air miles are extended to 200 air miles, which would go all the way up to Nelson, British Columbia, all the way over to Kellogg, Montana, and over into western Washington and down into Oregon. Some of those vendors could be driving 5 hours one way to come sell at the market. And the only people that are able to financially and have the time to drive 5 hours to sell at one market are those farmers that are big, they're established, they have the resources to be able to do that. So the farmers that will be coming in to sell at the market, if you expand the air miles, I think will be larger operations, and then they'll take up the niches and the increased demand, and then smaller farmers on the Palouse who may want to come into the market won't have that ability to do so. So I would ask the City Council to keep that 100 air mile radius as the goal for vendors, and there is room for exceptions that we have in the policies. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. That's kind of an interesting thing, if you just stay there for a second, is a lot of folks looked at that as 100 miles and not 100 air miles, and that makes a huge difference, because if you went by miles, it's 125 miles to Walla Walla, and not 80 air miles. Walter, do you have a question you want to ask her?
If you would, I'm confused over comments that we've received both from customers and vendors, and Kathleen, don't want to leave anybody out, regarding the 100 air miles. An email from Aaron said the 100-mile policy is not new, in all caps, or in most caps. And you just said the 100-mile policy is not new. Mm-hmm. And yet it's listed under a bullet on Kathleen's presentation as this change addressing the 100 air miles. It can't be both, so what am I missing?
We'll let Kathleen address that.
Yep. So in your legislative format, there's a sentence that explains the kind of the grandfathering, that if they're participating in the
exception.
13 market, they can participate in the 14, the people that are beyond the 100 air miles. And when Amanda talked about Tonemakers, Boothman, Akeley, Durfee, so the 100 miles has been in existence since probably about 2011 by the advisory board. Then when Randy Fife did the policies in 12, he just automatically put the 100 miles in there. And then last year when we were up against time, I recommended that we not change the 13 policies because we were getting so close to going into market. So I'd say it's been in there at least 3 years.
Walter? Yep.
So the change is the grandfathering. And
Identifying that and putting it in the document.
And if a outside 100-mile vendor is coming, they can keep coming. But if they miss a season, they're done. So the net effect...
They'll have to reapply. And that's why we put the and/or with the arts director and the market manager, because we do get calls from various folks on Thursdays and Fridays that might be coming from a long way, and we might not have it in the market, and we allow them to come into the market as a walk-on. But the season vendor, if you choose not to participate, they would have to reapply to be in the market again.
Okay. You want to do
Yeah, so I thought I was there, but now I'm confused again. Is the reapply only for people with blueberries and asparagus, or is it an apple vendor from 120 miles away that misses a season?
The example is Tonemakers in Royal City. They've been in our market
Forever.
forever. Okay, forever, Dan. And they're outside of the 100 air miles. But if they chose not to come this year in 2014, if they wanted to reapply in 15, it would probably go back to the commission, myself, and we'd relook at that.
Okay.
So, just to finish, I'm still working this. The exception talks about will be based upon the availability of product. So an apple vendor at 125 miles that's in can stay in until they don't come, in which case they cannot come back, because there are, as pointed out, apples within 100 miles.